And we're live, folks, back again. This is JP, aka The Demon, and you're here with the Shoutouts, officially in quarantine, keeping our responsible social distancing away, but trying to get at least one episode out to you. There we go. We got that out of the way. So today we are discussing the finality of The Witcher. And we have a one regular and one special guest today. And we did lose the hitman. He might have got eaten by something or other. I'm not really sure. But I'll throw it over to you guys for an introduction.
Alrighty. Well, gentlemen, as usual, the captain is recording from a distant location. Right now, I'm in a castle. I heard that there was supposed to be a Striga in here, but I'm not quite sure. Uh-oh. I think I heard something. Oh, by the way, my name is Andrew.
What's up, guys? Alex. I guess Little Demon, bringing in the family ties. The
there we go.
Little brother jumping in. Just finished Witcher 3, the game, so happy to kind of jump on and get into the discussion.
Perfect. All right, so we'll just get right into it. We were supposed to start 4 minutes ago, but thanks to me and Skype, we had some technical difficulties, and that's not a surprise, is it, for those of you who are working remotely for now going on several months. But let's just jump in. So we left off, we had discussed, and Captain, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had watched the first 2 episodes.
It was right? The first 3.
3? Okay.
Yeah, we kind of discussed the section where they were showing you the background of Centra and Nilfgaardian's sacking of the city, the kingdom of Centra. And then we discussed Yennefer's training at Aretuza, which was that big tower with all of the little wizardlings. And then I want to say that was pretty much it. And then we discussed the first episode where Geralt meets Renfri. And he gains, and we kind of learned the origin of the nickname, the Butcher of Blaviken.
Got it.
So that was kind of the stuff that we covered in the first 3 episodes.
Awesome. Thanks for that recap. That was very helpful to me, actually. And since that time, we had the opportunity to not only finish the show, but also some of us did some extracurricular activities on The Witcher. So let's kind of catch up on those. I think for me, I finished the show and then I read book 1 and then I started book 2. So now I have significantly more context, at least from that side of the story. Whereas if in the first 2 episodes, we were mainly talking about the show itself, I think, and some of our game expertise. And years and years ago, I did play Witcher 3, but I didn't make it through the expansions. How about you guys?
So when we originally recorded this earlier this year, I went on a huge Witcher binge, and I actually replayed the whole Witcher 3, and I downloaded Hearts of Stone, and I'm about halfway through that DLC. I still have yet to tackle Blood and Wine, but that is on the docket, and I will be playing that within the next month or 2.
Okay.
Awesome. So I did the same thing as soon as the show came out, went on the binge of all things Witcher, finished the game and both expansions. Heart of Stones was good. Blood and Wine is phenomenal. It's like a whole extra game in a whole different world. Like they give you a whole new map, whole new area to explore. So that is just phenomenally done. I think I have a little heartburn over the Heart of Stone DLC. I had some issues with one of the missions had a glitch, and I actually reached out to the producers of the game, and they said you could start a new one. So I just skipped it, but it's just that one annoying thing where you have one mission that's left and open, and I beat the entire game, but one mission is still incomplete. So I'm a little heartburn on the Heart of Stone, but Blood and Wine was phenomenal.
Awesome.
Now, we talked about that quite a bit, Al, and that was that sounded painful to me because I'm also kind of a completionist. So having that one stupid mission like open in the backfield, it takes me a little bit to let that go.
Yes.
Even if it didn't really matter. I always tell myself that it didn't really matter. I enjoyed it. It didn't matter. It didn't really matter. But still, you're playing the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think the captain had some similar situations with some glitching the first time he went through Skyrim, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some hilarious Skyrim glitches. I remember there was one that you were experiencing, Demon, which was actually worse than mine. Because I think I just had several quests which couldn't be completed. Right. Like there were just some key items that went missing, and it wouldn't let me complete the quest. But I remember, Demon, you had one in particular where wherever your character would cross water, you would just immediately drown. Like you would even step in a tiny little puddle that was only like, 3 inches deep, and your character would just insta-drown. Yep. It was like, oh my God, that's terrible.
It was even worse than that sometimes because he would often explode if I went into water. So like, I don't know if you know that so those guys is it what's the name of that company that does Skyrim and the nuclear war one? Bethesda, that's right.
And the nuclear war one is the Fallout series.
Yeah. So there's something that happens in both of those series where I remember that we were doing this with like you would jump off a tower and then shoot a nuke out of the rocket launcher down below you, and your like body would fly like crazy up in the air. Well, like
just go ragdoll.
Yeah. When my character would walk into water in Skyrim, his body just exploded like that. So
I feel like it's just a rogue producer who thought it would be really funny to mess with one person.
Yeah.
But never got back to like a rogue programmer's like, this one guy I'm gonna mess with.
Right. You know what, Demon? I remember what my biggest glitch in Skyrim was, which is pretty hilarious now that I remember it. So my character was a mage, and I had very low carrying capacity. And for whatever reason, they had these series of quests in the Bard's College where you're supposed to get instruments. And each one of those instruments weighed like 6 or 7 pounds. And I would turn in those quests, but it would keep the key instruments on my character. I couldn't turn them in, even though the quest said it was done. So I was literally stuck for the entire game carrying around like 20 pounds of instruments that I could not afford to carry.
You're like trying to keep your weight capacity low.
Right. Yeah. It just wasn't working out for me.
Well, sorry about that tangent, but we had to branch off and kind of gripe a little bit about that. But I think that the Witcher producers, they did say that they couldn't really fix it, right? Right, Al? So
yeah, they couldn't fix it. There was a second one too, but they actually, and it had to do with an additional armor that you can download that's just downloadable armor, and they fixed that in Blood and Wine, where you no longer needed the preliminary set of armor to build the final. Right. So they fixed that portion in Blood and Wine. But then, the one quest, they just were like, you could start it over. At the end of the day, it was like one side quest, but the completionist in me is still going to be bitter about it.
So now that we kind of got that out of the queue, and we'll have to talk a little bit about what we think about as they continue to build this series out, because I hear that they're just about to restart filming season 2. And it's been obviously on pause because of coronavirus and everything. But the interesting news is, since I had a chance to read the book in the meantime, I realized that it might be one of the closest and probably one of the better adaptions I've ever seen in terms of converting book material into show material. I wouldn't put it up to Lord of the Rings maybe standards, in my opinion. A lot of people actually do, especially if your name's Christopher Tolkien, you're not a fan of those. But I loved them. I would say that this is one of the better, almost sometimes word for word, story for story adaptions from book to show, which I was completely caught off guard, because I thought, holy cow, this Geralt of Rivia has captured probably the book, but he's really captured the game persona. And I wasn't aware how well they did in the games even to kind of emulate the story and the world of the Witcher books as they progressed down those sequels, right? Because the games happen post-book series. So I was really impressed with that when I was reading it, although there was a few stories I was a little sad didn't show up yet.
Yeah.
I'd say that's my kind of opinion.
In particular, Jeff, and I want to say this was in the beginning of the second book. I can't remember if it was in the first one or if it was in the second book, but the whole mini story where Geralt meets the somewhat civilized monster, who would turn into like this big, I was kind of picturing a big bear werewolf type dude. Yeah. And he was, he had a little fling with a Bruxa vampire. And I was like, oh my God, dude, this story is awesome. I really, really was interested in this guy's backstory, like his relationship with this vampire and stuff. And yeah, that one didn't make it into the show yet, but who's to say? Maybe they have that slated on for season 2.
Yeah. I think a cool thing too in reading the book to the show, because the books obviously comprise their short stories, so it's not necessarily following an overarching storyline like the show does. But I love in the show they give you the first episode, which really like kind of gives you in tune of what's going on. And then the next few episodes until they start to build the story up almost seem like those random short stories, particularly for Geralt. So they'll do like the one where he gets captured by the elves prior to the dinner and stuff. So they don't necessarily seem to tie into the story at that point. But I think that's like a cool credence to the short stories within the books and how those are formatted.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, that was actually something interesting that I noticed in the book that I thought, I don't know if it was originally that way or if they tied it in this way after they decided to compile the short stories into kind of a more functional story. Because what they did in the book is they made it so that just like it starts essentially just like it starts in the show, in when Geralt is going to go tackle the Striga, I believe. And that whole kind of thing is going down, right? And then what happens is Geralt gets injured, just like he does in the show. He gets injured in the battle with the Striga. And then what happens is in the book, he's passed out for a while. Like not in a coma, but he's essentially just passed out in the hospital bed. And during that time, in the short stories, they're going backwards in the past. And so he's like kind of dreaming, in essence, some of the background stuff. And then in the book, he gets up. And I kind of caught it. He kind of like gets up and he's like, "Oh, you were injured. You're recovering now. You better recover." And he's like reminiscing about these past things, and that's what's stirring the short stories that happen, in the book and in the show.
Right. Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, I would imagine that the show might be a little difficult for people who have never been introduced to the Witcher universe to follow, because they're kind of showing you Geralt's development, Ciri's development, and Yennefer's development all at different times. So you're following almost 3 separate timelines all in the first 3 episodes. Right. And I could imagine why people would be pretty frustrated. I had a few buddies who gave the show a try and they're like, "Dude, I like it, but I just don't know what the heck is going on." And I'm like, yeah, I don't blame you. If you haven't read the books or played any of the games, you're just not going to know what's happening. But I did see a note from, they had an article where somebody interviewed the executive producer for the Witcher show, Tomek Baginski is his name. And he said that season 2 is going to be a lot more streamlined and straightforward. So they're going to be jumping around a lot less for season 2 as far as the timelines are concerned.
Yeah. I hope, when I hear things like that, I'm happy, but I also hope they don't compromise their own artistic instincts to just listen to certain fans, because they're, regardless of the complaining and that some people could like kind of did or didn't get into it, you can't argue that it worked, right? So it was successful for a reason. But you're right. I'm glad they don't need to do that twice, right? It was fun. They jumped around. They told some stories in the past. They told some stories in the future. And they even told us some stories that we didn't get in the books, right? With Yennefer specifically. Her backstory is mentioned, but it's not actually presented in the books.
Right.
So like that was, in my opinion, kind of cool just because you got to see it, number one. But number two, it's jumping around, but that aha moment at like, I think it's like episode 4. I think it's like episode 4, you get this aha, like, holy shit, the timelines. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it all comes together.
Yeah, but you have to get to episode 4 in order to get that aha. So,
I think because of that, the show definitely warrants a second watch, because the second time through, when you understand that, you pick up on so much more. But yeah, and then just kind of sidebar on the aha moment, it's whenever Yennefer completes her transition. And you see the brother and sister who Geralt frees the kid from the curse that she's under in a previous episode. When we saw them, that's when we realized, we were like, oh, this is different time frames going on. But I think it's a really cool way to introduce everyone's backstory kind of simultaneously. There's no real other way to do that, but then still having them all converge to a consistent overarching story. I thought it was really cool the way they did it. So yeah, I hope they don't lose too much of the artistic ability to do things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
It's one of those things though, like they did it in the first season, and that, like, I always do hate when shows like try to redo it too often, right? Yeah. Like, this is our thing, we're gonna redo it and redo it and redo it, and then by season 3 you're just kind of like, really? So but I guess we'll see. So so Alex, you had the opportunity to go back and rewatch the whole series again, and you did it not only after you watched it the first time.
Yep.
You read a book and you played the game and the DLCs, and then you went back and watched it?
Yeah. So watched it, went back, started playing the game, simultaneously did the first book. Haven't got past the first book, but now finished the game. To the show, I love just the intro. Obviously, the intro starts with him fighting the Kikimora, I believe it is. But I just love that they tie in the potions and everything. And I love when he first gets to the bar, when he meets Remry for the first time, and he gets there. And he's just got this monster on his horse, Roach, which he talks to, which is very much in tune with the game. But I love that he walks in, he's like, anyone want to buy this monster? And I feel like it just perfectly encapsulates, like, I just see myself in the game putting the trophy on the horse and then riding into the town to collect your bounty. I was like, this could not start any more perfect.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, we all really liked the first 3 episodes. I think that was a fantastic introduction to the Witcher world. You get to see a lot of spell casting. You get to see a lot of the political intrigue that's going on. You get to see some good old-fashioned monster slaying with Geralt. So you get, the whole gamut in those first 3 episodes.
The interesting thing that you mentioned is the potions. Now, we were talking about this. They haven't dove super deep into it yet in the show, but they hint at it a lot, right? He's like collecting herbs. He takes a potion before he goes to fight the Striga, and as you know, if you play the game, it's really hard until you figure out how to use potions to your advantage. Right. It's literally like until you figure that piece out, it could be kind of a pain in the ass.
Right.
And, I think Alex, you were telling me that offline that you discovered that you were almost like, I need to just toy around with the difficulty levels until you figured out, oh, holy cow, I need to use all my potion, right?
Yeah, I had an aha because it's so intricate in the gameplay and how they give you all the potions, and I definitely had an aha moment because I wasn't really using them that much, and then I realized how vital they are to completing the game. So yeah, it was like, I don't know if I can beat this boss on my 15th time, and it takes 10 minutes to load every time I die.
Right.
You look at the game level, and I was like, oh, potion. So yeah, I'm glad they paid close details to that because it's super important in the game.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Preparation for battle is as much as, there's enough importance placed on that compared to the fight itself. Yeah. Like, you need to be well prepared and you need to perform well during the fight. So they combine both of those elements in Witcher, which a lot of people like. A little bit of strategy and
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. So so we watched the first three. We were highly impressed. I remember we talked heavily about the scene where, I mean, the action sequences that they were doing in The Witcher were done very, very well. Not only how the fighting was, and they weren't using cuts. They were essentially doing, the entire scene all the way through, running through all the action sequences.
Right.
So, I mean, that was stellar. Number two, it wasn't just how well Henry Cavill prepared for the role to deliver that, including his own stunt work and the stunt team themselves, but also how they tied in some of the Witcher powers. I know we were highly impressed with where they were using, like, what did he use? He used Ard. Yeah, he goes in and uses Ard. And so they tie in. Yeah, so they tie in some of the magic, although I'm excited to see some more. He did use the force field one as well. Quen, that's right.
Yep.
And
tried using the Axie mind control on Remy,
Renfrey.
Renfrey.
Yes, thank you. In the first episode too, which she was also immune to magic. So
right, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was pretty awesome. And then I know as you continue to watch it, I fully enjoyed it. Specifically, there were scenes that I absolutely loved with, I'm going to say this 3 different ways. Dandelion. If you did the audio book.
Yesker.
And Yesker. Yeah, if you did the audiobook version.
The Scottish accent.
Yeah, the Scottish accent, and he's Dandelion. And I kind of loved that as well.
Yeah.
The game obviously is Dandelion, and then Yesker in the show, which actually means dandelion in Polish.
Did you know the translation is actually buttercup, which is a flower?
Yeah, that's right. Tell us this.
They changed, so Yesker actually translates to buttercup, but they changed it to dandelion because they didn't think they could call a male character Buttercup in the game. So they're like, well, let's make it close because it's a flower similar to a dandelion. It looks similar.
Nice.
So they switched it from Buttercup to dandelion. So Yesker actually means buttercup.
So I almost love that more, and I cannot stop thinking about The Princess Bride when I hear Buttercup. Just cannot.
That's hilarious. I think both of those names work well for Dandelion because, like, Buttercup, he's very effeminate. Dandelion, especially in the games, he's super effeminate, and he's also kind of a weed. So Dandelion works too. So he's very much an annoyance to Geralt. So I think both of those fit him pretty well.
Dude, that's actually we didn't even talk about that the first time. Thinking about Dandelion or Dandelion as a weed is just awesome. And he's not just any weed. He's a weed that actually looks a little bit pretty sometimes.
Exactly.
Before it really grows out of control. Spreads its seed everywhere. So that works out really well. So I was a little bit bummed we didn't get more of, because in the book we do get introduced to our dwarf buddy. Man, what was his name?
So there's 2 of them. The main one in the game is Zoltan Chevet. He's kind of the dwarf that helps you out mainly in The Witcher 3.
And he helps Dandelion out a lot too.
Yes, he's definitely part of their crew.
Yeah.
And in the show, the only dwarf that we really get to meet is Yarpen Zigrin, who is also in the Gwent game. But really, I think really the only mission that he's with Geralt on is that dragon slaying one. I could be wrong because I haven't read further into the books, but it seems, those are 2 different characters.
Mm. No, that's a great point. I forgot how much I enjoyed Gwent too. So I'm a little bummed. I hope they do a little bit more of a zing or a flash or like a just kind of a throw or shout out. Gwent.
I'm sure they have to in the show. I'm sure they'll briefly show some guys in the background playing a game, and someone will comment on it or something, and that's all we'll get. But that would just be an awesome little Easter egg to Gwent.
Now, I'm also excited. I don't know. So I'm reading book 2 now. Mm-hmm. So I haven't gotten very far, but I think season 1, because of the storylines that they were telling, is actually a bit of a fusion of book 1 and 2. because
Yeah.
Ciri's storyline, what I'm gathering so far, is taking place mostly in book 2. And so I think they kind of combined books 1 and 2 together in season 1, parts of them at least. And so I'm excited for that. And because I'm reading it, so it'll be kind of cool to go back. But then I'm also excited for season 2. That means they'll probably throw a little bit of 3 and 4 together, is my thought. Now, I don't know how many books there are total. I can't remember. There's quite a few, though. I think there's...
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be... We might have to
it's like
fact
7 or 8.
Yeah, I was thinking it might be 7.
Yeah.
It could be more. It might be 7 in some other stories, but even either way, there's quite a few. So I would suspect that we at least have 3 seasons of The Witcher, assuming that Henry continues to, they continue to renew it, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. I saw in some of the just a little bit of the preliminary research I did before the show, the makers of the Netflix show said that they'll continue making Witcher as long as there's enough source material, which there is, because Andrzej Sapkowski has created quite a lot, and B, the other stipulation was as long as Netflix is getting their viewers, as long as we keep watching it, they'll keep making it.
Gotcha.
So those were kind of the 2 stipulations. So it sounds like the production crew is fully on board. As long as they have the ability to make it, they will.
Good. I hope that they do, because I think they're doing a great job. This is interesting because we didn't have a chance to shoot our Altered Carbon 2 episodes yet.
Yeah.
But I have now watched that Altered Carbon 2. I think we will eventually. I don't know if you had a chance yet, Andrew.
I'm like 75% through the 2nd season.
Okay. So I read the book too. And when you were talking a divergent split of story, it's almost unrecognizable. So they by the beginning of it, they take only very certain elements and they keep it. And I feel like with Witcher, they're not going to be doing that. They're going to be very honest to the material. It seems that way. So we'll know for sure next, but I kind of like that. I understand that you should be changing things, and the important thing to me is that you keep the same vibe or feel more than the actual story itself. But if I'm like reading the book and then I'm watching the show or I'm playing the game, I want the same feeling, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be perfect, and you're going to have to change stuff, but I think they're doing a good job so far. Although there are some gripes, and I know we'll talk about them a little bit later this episode. But
and I think with that, they did a great job casting it. And I guess going to one of the more important, like Henry Cavill kills it. But the woman, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, they cast as Yennefer. I thought they did a really good job, and I think
she crushed it.
Yes,
her name is Anya Shalatra, is Yennefer.
And her and Cavill have great chemistry. Like that whole relationship's very believable. And I guess kind of jumping back into the show too, in one of the key episodes when they first meet, which is a great episode. But even tying like the way they introduced the book stories as well as the game stories is the whole issue surrounding the djinn and the wishes.
Right.
Yes.
You don't hear his third wish, but you obviously eventually figure out that his wish tied them together. And I think that's going to be an overarching theme throughout, because you see it continue to pop up in the games. In Witcher 3, you have to deal with the situation on breaking the djinn and the connection and the bond. So that intricacy, and I think into the story, I think they are going to follow it, at least that overarching theme, and not stray too far away. But yeah, I think they did a really good job of capturing their relationship. And that episode too is in a perfect Jaskier moment when he finds out they're alive. He sees them and enjoying themselves. He's like, "Oh, they're very much alive."
That's right.
They're alive and getting busy doing it.
Yes,
that was a great cast too. Whoever they got, Dandelion, exactly. was stellar. And also, I don't know why they didn't release that song on Apple Music at the same time. They should have released that, our OST the same time the show came out, because like every single person on the planet was trying to download toss a coin to your Witcher.
Yes, Demon. I know I told you this story, but Mini Demon Alex, like probably a few weeks after the show was out, I was telling Jeff the story that I went into a Walmart to do some shopping before a party, and I was walking through the snack aisle, and there was a little kid kind of pacing back and forth with like his head down, and he was literally singing that song to himself, "Toss a coin to your Witcher," and I kind of just looked over and I'm like, "Oh, Witcher fan," and I gave him a thumbs up, and I just got my chips and got out of there. But it was like, man, people, just random people on the street are singing "Toss a coin to your Witcher."
So it's
I feel
really
like little kids probably shouldn't be watching that based on the violence level, but I love that he's just sitting there, toss a coin to your Witcher.
Right. The kid was probably like 10 or 12.
So we don't have a Randall Flagg moment to get a refill, but I'm empty. So I'm going to go ahead and get a quick refill. I don't know how you guys are feeling. That looked empty to me, Captain.
Yeah, it's empty.
All right. I say that we will do a quick, what we'll do is in the YouTube feed, we'll have a Randall Flagg moment with a clap. And that'll be number one. And then when we come back and we clap again, we will magically have filled drinks. Thank you, Randall Flagg. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Randall Flagg. We now have filled beverages. We much appreciate that. So while you know, since we're not actually doing this live, while we were out, folks, we started to go down a Randall Flagg rabbit hole. And Little Demon gave me a good little instruction because he's played the Heart of Stone. Is it Heart of Stone or Heart of Stones?
Hearts of Stone, I believe.
Hearts of Stone.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like a rock band. I'm trying to figure out what the album title is. But you would you say, Al, you mentioned that they have a little like a Easter egg to the Dark Tower?
Well, that character is very much, as you play it, the Man in the Mirror, I believe is his nickname, or the Man of Mirrors, but he's very much a, Randall Flagg. Of
Walter O'Dea.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a Randall Flagg of the Witcher realm.
Okay.
Yeah. His in the Witcher realm, his name is Gaunter O'Dim. And right away when I was
Gaunter
playing that,
O'Dim.
I'm like, wait a minute. That sounds familiar. And sure enough, I looked online. I'm like, yep, he's definitely Randall Flagg. And you find out that he's got very much Randall Flagg type powers.
Yeah.
Like he literally is on par with all of the other main characters of this game. He's very powerful. And he's actually he's not just in the DLC, he's actually in the main base game, Witcher 3 as well, but you only meet him fleetingly in White Orchard.
Is he running or hiding?
He's not running or hiding, but in the very beginning of the game, you actually meet him in White Orchard, which is that first town where you're looking for Yennefer in. He's sitting in the bar, and he tells Geralt where Yennefer is. And he's like, in exchange, you can just help me later down the line.
Oh,
And that was Randall Flagg right there.
that is not a man you want to be trying to help later down the line.
Right.
And you find that out the hard way in Heart of Stones.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Who is this guy?
Oh, that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's always precisely where he needs to be.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Randall Flagg, a.k.a. Gunter O'Dim in this case. We have Gunter has provided us refill on our beverages, and we only have to help him later down the line. So we'll see how that will go. But
we'll see how that works out for us.
yeah. Hey, man, as long as you have, like, I don't know, a giant were spider around, it may not matter too much.
Exactly.
Oh, spoiler.
Awesome.
All right, guys. It's not really, but, go ahead and enjoy the Dark Tower series, because that is actually what we're releasing right now. As a matter of fact, earlier today, as we record this, which won't matter to you guys because this will come out probably sometime after those episodes, but we have been releasing the Dark Tower episodes, which we have actually recorded more than a year ago. easily more than a year ago. So they're old episodes. We've been keeping them in the library because we had to prioritize some other works. But now through the situation that we have with, coronavirus and such, we're going to finish releasing those to give us time to do these side episodes to finish The Witcher. And up and coming, we've got The Wheel of Time. And not the whole team will be involved in the Wheel of Time, but the Wheel of Time, being purchased by Amazon, is now going to be releasing season 1. It was supposed to be later this year, but now we don't know what the delay will be, but it'll probably be next year. And the Wheel of Time is one of the all-time ultimate epic fantasies, and it actually catapulted Brandon Sanderson to fame because Robert Jordan's wife is his editor as well and was editing all of the books of the Wheel of Time. And she hand-selected Sanderson to finish the book series. And Robert Jordan, as he was going to pass away, he knew it was terminal, and he was trying to finish the book series himself, but he knew he probably wouldn't get there. So he actually mapped the whole story out and then wrote the end himself and then packaged it, gave it to his wife, and said, you'll be selecting the author to finish this. And that's how Brandon Sanderson, though he was already published at that time and very good, it kind of catapulted him to even further stardom because of the fan base of The Wheel of Time. So very cool that we're going to get that show, another adaptation that I'm sure we will be talking about. So I think some of us are going to do book 1. However, once the show comes out, we'll do one of these where we reflect on the world as a whole, and we'll invite a broader group, who's just going to be watching the show. But we like that input. So, okay, enough of advertising for the future. Back to The Witcher. Now that we have our Witcher cocktails, which, by the way, it seems like Geralt of Rivia's favorite is just an ale.
Yeah.
Geralt wants an ale. Which
right.
I was doing enough of yesterday that I've switched to whiskey today. But an ale, a good old beer, old-fashioned beer. But can Witchers actually get drunk? That's my question.
Well,
or is there metabolism like, Captain America?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems like in the game, a single sip of a beer will make Geralt go like dizzy. So I'm wondering if he's almost like diabetic level, where like
he just gets low blood sugar.
Right? He shouldn't be drinking, but he does anyway. It's hard to say.
So I will say,
I call all poisons of the world except for alcohol.
I feel like Geralt drinks ale because it's the cheapest drink, and he's always struggling to find coin.
Yeah.
Because when you get into the game, and particularly in Blood and Wine DLC, he's very much a wine drinker in that, and you're very much collecting a lot of wine. So I think he just needs to get a little more, change in his pocket. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I guess a small, not a spoiler, small nugget in the Blood and Wine that I think is cool is with one of the missions, you can actually help a vineyard out, and they name a wine after Geralt, and you get to choose the wine name.
Oh, my God. That's awesome.
What did you name your vineyard?
My wine was named the White Wolf.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Was it a white wine? It should be, right?
Probably, yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
So I think Geralt could be a wine drinker. We haven't seen him with enough coin in the show yet.
At this point in the show, he's still struggling to share or to sell his. What wasn't the Striga? What was the first monster?
Kikimora.
Kikimora. Right? That's right.
Yeah. He couldn't sell that.
He actually put Roach up as collateral in one of those episodes too. Like he was so strapped for cash. And replaying the whole Witcher 3 game, I definitely felt that, because I would say for the first like 6 or 7 hours of the game, you're pretty much flat broke. Like you're really struggling to make ends meet. It's really not until you get to maybe like Novigrad or even later where you start having an actual wallet where you could be like, okay, I'm going to splurge a little bit here and do this, if I remember it correctly.
Since you guys played it more fresh, do you remember, did you have to buy different size wallets to increase your carrying capacity of Okane? Okay,
no,
you didn't.
it was infinite. I think that wasn't an issue because you were so broke for the first several hours of the game that wallets didn't matter because you weren't going to have money anyway.
And then every contract that you do, the monsters are too high of levels for you to actually try and take on the contracts. Right. It's a circle of poverty there.
Right. And I remember there was an interesting component to the game. I'm sure you guys remember this, where you would negotiate a price with the peasants who had the contract. And I remember in my second playthrough, I got it down to a science where I'd only go 6 or 7 coins higher than what they asked. And every time they'd be like, yes. But sometimes if I did 10 coins more, they'd be like, no way, man. Way too much.
I remember there was a few like later in the game where I was like legitimately trying to negotiate like 1,000 above. And I don't know. Maybe my memory is off. Was there ever a time where we were able to do that? Was it like a super high contract or something?
It's like a few $100 usually.
Yeah.
Oh, it's go like 200 to 300 more. Right. No, the real struggle in that is when you're trying to deal with what you have to worry about is the saddle size or the saddle weight capacity the horse bag so Roach could carry more stuff. Right. Yeah. Because when you pick up you'd scavenge too much stuff and you'd be overweight, and then Geralt can only walk really slowly. Right. And it's like, do I drop something or do I try to get to a quick travel so I can go sell some stuff? Because I'm broke. I have no money.
And now you guys feel my pain in Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I remember that, Alex.
So let's talk through a few things in the show now that we're back.
Sure.
I have a few interesting gripes, and I'm curious to see if you guys felt the same way. Mm-hmm. And overall, they're very minimal gripes. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm being nitpicky because I love the show, right?
I think all three of us are in agreement that the show did an awesome job.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think we do have a few complaints. Yeah. Somewhat picky complaints.
It's a little
We're
bit
being picky.
Yeah. Maybe, and there might be production reasons for this too. So, I don't want to throw that out the window because sometimes, but how did you guys feel about that final battle? I felt like it was like supposed to be really epic, and it was, but it wasn't. There were certain characters that kind of went out in certain ways that I don't know, maybe didn't expect or expected, which maybe that's actually a reality of war too. But also I almost felt maybe it was rushed. It could have been rushed potentially. How did you feel about that?
Alex, did you want to start us off or should I?
Yeah, no, I can. Well, and I literally just watched it before we started recording this.
Oh, that's a great perspective because for me it's a memory, right? So that's good.
I don't know if I got the vibe that it was supposed to be that epic, and maybe it's because it was my second time watching it.
I thought it was The Last Stand. Wasn't it supposed to be like The Last Stand? If they break through here, the whole country's effed.
True.
Wasn't it that?
But I think that part of it having so much background in the world and somewhat of the story itself, maybe kind of a little bit of what's going to happen or what it's leading up to, which maybe spoils it a little bit. I think the big point you make, though, is about like some of the Triss, who's obviously a major character in the games and somewhat in the show, is in a few episodes, but like maybe some guy reaches in and burns her. Some guy reaches in with a torch and burns her, and she's just like down and out for the entire. And I'm like, can't she like heal herself or like? Right. It's like it didn't seem like it was like I got burned. You guys take this one. So like in some of those, I think I agree, but I thought it served its purpose because I think inevitably it's supposed to lead up to Yen showing that she's the baddest mage witch
around
for the time being, at least.
Right.
Yeah. Triss hasn't put on her gangsta pants yet and turned into a thug.
Right.
Once she does that, she's like equal in a different level.
Right.
I mean, equal in a different way. May not be with magic, but
Yeah. I think the mages certainly saw that as kind of being their last stand, because if they stopped the Nilfgaardian army there at that point, Temeria never would have officially have been invaded, so they could have postponed an entire war. But because they, and again, spoiler alert for listeners, because the mages lose.
Quick warning! This is now episode 3 of The Witcher. We are talking about the whole damn thing. So
this is the last episode.
If you haven't caught on yet, turn your shit off and go watch it. Go watch it, and then be wary, because we talk about the games too. Although what we found is that you guys are yelling at us to get caught up on that stuff. So,
so it's not an issue.
Yeah, maybe not an issue. All right, continue, Captain. Sorry.
But because the mages lose the Battle of Sodden, it's just the beginning. Because then that opens up the gates for Nilfgaard to go all over Temeria and start. And basically, it kicks off the events of Witcher 2, Witcher 3, like all of it. It kicks off everything. So I think the mages did see it as a last stand, because they're like, if we can stop Nilfgaard here, their expansion's going to end. They'll just be content with what they have, and they're not going to go any further north. So, like, there was some seriousness there. But I do agree also that the show kind of maybe missed the mark slightly on it, and kind of gave some weird endings to some of those characters. I know one of the characters I wanted to discuss was Vilgefortz, who was the male mage.
The male mage. Yeah.
He was the sword guy who could summon a sword.
Yes.
He's a huge character in the books, in the game, in the in the show, obviously. And the scene where I know a lot of people online were upset by the fact that Cahir defeated Vilgefortz in battle, which I'm not really going to get into that, but I guess Vilgefortz is really a badass, and for him to lose to Cahir in the show really upset a lot of the Witcher book fans.
Okay.
I'm not going to comment on that. I think that they're probably right in some of that.
Yeah. Maybe. I'm curious. When Andrew, before you keep going, when does Vilgefortz really show up in the books? Is it book 2 that we're really introduced to him?
I really don't know. I haven't gotten up to the point in the books where Vilgefortz becomes a main heavy hitter. So I don't know when he becomes a major person front and center. But just looking at the lore, I know that he's a big character, and he's a major antagonist of the series.
Okay. I would love if our listeners would actually comment in on this and give us your opinions in this sense, because we're not there yet. We are still trying to catch up. So, I would love it if you guys chime in here at this point. Sorry, Captain.
Please do chime in. I was just going to say, the one scene that was really upsetting was when he bludgeons the one mage to death after he loses his fight with Cahir. He kind of just stumbles off in the woods, and he just bludgeons some random war hero to death. And you're like, what the hell was that all about, dude? Like, WTF?
Was that mage one of the captured Nilfgaardian mages, though?
No, that mage was on his side, and he brutally murdered him.
Just because he lost. He was like, I lost. Oh, mate.
And from my own understanding, as a viewer who hadn't gotten that far in the books, I'm like, dude, that's really disturbing. Why did he do that? And I looked a little bit further, and I saw that that Vilgefortz is really a bad guy. He's not a good guy at all. He's a terrible person. Okay. And the whole reason he was allied with those mages to begin with is to give himself power, to ingratiate himself with the North, and then to turn tail. His original plan was to turn tail against Emperor Emir of Nilfgaard and be like, oh, now that you've been stopped at this battle, this was his original plan, I can get you in on my country, and I can give you an insight. So because Nilfgaard actually won that battle, he's like, fuck, my plan failed. Now I'm screwed. I don't know how I'm going to get in the Emperor's good graces again. So all of this is revealed later in the series, but that's kind of why he reacted the way he did in the show.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah, and there's no hint of any of that in the show. As a viewer, you're just like, what the hell just happened? I don't understand what the fuck's going on. But
why did he go kill this guy?
Yeah, but that's what happens. And even in Witcher 3, I replayed it recently, and Geralt actually mentions Vilgefortz in the game when he's talking to Philippa Eilhart, and Philippa threatens him. She's the blind mage who's like super powerful, and she kind of threatens Geralt, and he's like, well, I might end up taking care of you like I took care of Vilgefortz. And so you know that like Geralt really exterminated Vilgefortz with like extreme prejudice. So you know that this guy was a terrible, terrible person. So, none of that is precluded in the show, but that's eventually what happens.
Okay.
It seems like he might even be on par with like a Ramsay Bolton type character. Like he's really despicable. Yeah.
So I wonder why they should have, because you're right, with that being the case, like my only logical resolution was like that must have been a Nilfgaardian mage, because it doesn't make sense for him to just kill someone like that. So I wish they would have given more context to like plant a few more seeds to where you're kind of like, is he good or is he not?
Right.
Maybe, yeah, because until that point, he seemed like a good guy.
Right. Yeah. He had everybody fooled. He had the mages fooled. He had the audience fooled that he was a good guy.
But maybe that's kind of the fun, because they're like, we're gonna get more seasons out of this, so we could develop this, slowly or whatever. But wow, that's great context though, because I remember watching that and being like, what a little child or whatever, just like he's throwing a tantrum and kills a guy and then. Heads off.
War hero.
A war hero. Yeah.
A random nameless war hero who are like, because it clearly showed that dude had killed dozens of guys. Yeah. And you're like, oh man, this guy needs some help. Get him some help. He'll be back up and fighting again. But no, Vilgefortz just bludgeons him to death with a fucking stick or whatever it is.
Man.
Yeah.
So there's a few character things that happen in that, and there's some other mages, I think, that maybe are going to be more prolific in the future if they lived, if they died. Maybe they're more, I don't know, were more prolific in the story itself. But there was a few mages that just kind of went out of action, like.
Yeah. On that note, and specifically Triss, I know in the books, in the first two books, they do mention that supposedly Triss dies at the Battle of Sodden. So I'm guessing that maybe, she was really badly injured or something. I don't know. Maybe she gets resurrected. I'm not sure. But they definitely mention that in the books. I'm sure you remember Demon, where Triss goes back to Kaer Morhen in the second book. And Geralt's like, oh my God, I thought you were dead.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that moment. One of the other mages is Sabrina, who was one of the mages fighting with Yennefer, and she gets the worm in her ear, and then she attacks Yennefer with an arrow. She has a lot more lore in the story as well, and she's she plays kind of a significant role in Witcher 2, from my understanding as well. So I'm sure at some point we're going to see more of her as well. And then the mage that everyone was kind of questioning what they're doing with is Fringilla Vigo, who actually helps you at the end of Witcher 3. Yes, but in the show, Fringilla Vigo is extremely evil in the show. It's interesting what they're going to do with her character.
She believes in the Nilfgaardian cause, to say the least. She actually is supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, Yennefer's cousin as well. So it seems like they kind of took a different route there. But I think in the previous video games, Geralt has a relationship with her because he's missing Yennefer. I thought I read that, and I'm fairly certain, but if I am inaccurate, I apologize. But I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Yennefer's cousin in that story, and they've kind of taken a different route with her from, I think, a little bit of the other story.
Yeah. Big time. It seemed like maybe her character was irredeemably evil would be a good would be a good descriptor.
Irredeemable though, is it? It seems that way. It seems that way.
She's pretty evil in the show, and she does help you at the end of Witcher 3. So it's kind of weird how it seemed like you really needed her at the end of Witcher 3. So
I wonder though, because she was in Nilfgaard she was a Nilfgaardian captive in Witcher 3. So who knows if she's just like, I'll do this and I can get out of Nilfgaard jail. So.
Out of jail, yeah. Who knows?
You know, that's a good point.
Could be part of that. You
know, she's working with Nilfgaard now. Maybe shit hits the fan. Geralt of Rivia decides to kind of put a stop to that stuff, and then good old Emperor what's his face throws her in Dungeon Town.
Right. Who's to say, man?
Is if she's irredeemably evil, is Gunther O'Dim irredeemably?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Randall Flagg here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There is some allure there though, because you never quite know what he is or his motives are, kind of throughout. So you're like, I'm pretty sure he's bad, but I don't know if I know for sure that he is.
Yeah, he's extremely evil, but he is capable of good, and occasionally he will do some good. So it's, it's one of those moral questions where it's like, overall, what is he? Bad or good? Well, it's gray. It's gray.
Yeah.
I always find that the O'Dims tend to do good only if they can be doing more evil to that good later. It's all set up for them.
There's a personal evil gain within the good that they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
I think Gunter needs to get me a refill real quick. So, I don't know, 2 minutes, and then we do the last push. What do you think, guys?
Sounds good.
Works.
All right. A Gunter. Now I'm filled. Thank you, Gunter O'Dim.
Fresh beer for Gunter O'Dim. Thanks.
What a world we live in.
I'm gonna pay him back at a later date. I'm not gonna worry about that.
All right. So we've been rambling, but we are definitely gonna get into episodic story. Might as well. So take the lead, guys. Take it where you want. I talked about a gripe at the end, but I mean, I enjoyed the whole story. I mean, all the way through. Obviously, it was awesome to see the genie situation.
Yeah.
I do wish and I hope we still get to see that short story with the beast in the house who can command the house with his powers. Yeah. But take it, man. Where do we want to go? I mean, we had a lot of episodes. All of them to the T were from book 1 or 2, which is pretty cool. At least it seems that way.
Right.
Well, I think with that one thing too, that we haven't really talked much about Ciri, but in the show in general, just the overarching story or concept of destiny, and Geralt obviously being tied to Ciri, and the way they portray that throughout, where it's, I think the whole scene where he calls the prize or surprise is basically his payment, and then she pukes. Beautifully done.
Is it the rule of surprise
rule of surprise,
something like that, or law?
Yeah.
Is it rule or law? I think it's a rule of surprise.
Yeah, what you have, but you don't know that you have.
Was it law of surprise? Okay,
yeah.
Law of surprise.
So I just think is a cool overarching story, and the way they kind of tie that in throughout. Obviously, Ciri's story shown her struggling and running and trying to find Geralt. But rewatching it again and just seeing the ending, where Geralt helps a merchant, saves him. The merchant in return saves Geralt, who's bit by one of the creatures and poisons him. Meanwhile, Ciri's with his wife, which you don't know, and you just see destiny playing out in the respect that they both end up in the same spot at the end. So it's almost like a gratifying end to season 1, where you're like, it starts as small stories, but once you get into the overarching, looking for them to kind of meet and finally find each other. And it kind of ends in that way where it's completely random in quote unquote destiny is how they find each other at the end. I thought that was really cool.
You bring up a great point, and I know Ben's not here, but we had a living Brett bet on this very freaking topic.
Whether they would
Did we
meet.
not, Captain? Did we not?
We did. We will have to reconcile that.
Yes. I can have it for him.
Separate video. You can have it for him.
Yeah.
Do you remember what we said, Captain?
Oh man, I don't remember. I'm sure I have it written down.
I think
not prepared for that, but
Ben said they weren't going to meet. This could be wrong, by the way. I said they were, but it was going to be the episode before the end, which was wrong.
Oh yes, I do remember.
And I said it's not going to be the finale. It was the finale,
Yeah.
and I can't remember what you said, dude.
I think I said that they were going to meet in a future season. So
Yeah,
because
okay.
I thought there was more stuff with Yennefer that was going to be tied in. So I was wrong as well. So I'll also.
Well, and I love too the first thing that Ciri says to him. So they hug and they finally meet, and Geralt says something about Destiny, and she's like, "Who's Yennefer?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Wait, hold on a second." And that's how the season ends.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. What?
Yeah, Geralt definitely took a back seat in that entire last episode,
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
which was
But-
kind of odd.
That gets me excited for season 2 because in his hallucinations, you start seeing some of when his mom left him, and you don't see Vesemir, who I'm assuming is going to be in season 2, but you hear his voice basically being like, "Come with me, little boy," or whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So that gave me, especially, I didn't appreciate that, I think, the first time I watched it, but after doing the books and playing the game, obviously Vesemir is a huge character in the game, but hearing him and then being like, oh, maybe we'll get to see like some of Geralt's training or like what happened to him beforehand. I thought that was a cool nugget in the last episode that they dropped that I
Right.
appreciated much more the second time around.
Well, also it's crazy because was it the book or am I? You guys correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was the book where there was like that whole thing with Geralt's mom, where he's like talking about that whole abandonment thing, or that was the show. Was it the show or was it both? I can't remember now. I'm
Definitely
like,
the show. I don't remember it in the book, but in the
Okay.
show, they show the scene. His mom basically dumps him to go get water and then leaves him.
That's
Yeah.
what,
And his mom is a mage too.
wasn't there
was-
something?
She was making
odd.
an apple float. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't there something in the book and in the games where they talk about his transition into witchering? But either way,
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. That backstory is like, that's going to be awesome to see if we can
Agreed.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do know because Geralt says like he has a scene where he's talking to his mom. He's like, "Did you know only 3 of 10 children that go through the trials to become a Witcher survive?" It's like, "Did you know that when you dropped me off? Basically, that you gave me a 70% chance at death by dropping me there." So he's obviously got some issues with abandonment and
Right. Parental issues.
parental issues.
Well, the thing that's interesting about that is in the book they say often about how children of destiny often can become witchers. You know what I mean? Like children of destiny, because there's some part to play because of the law of surprise and whatnot. By the way, I want to go back. I know it was in the first few episodes, but I loved the way that what's his name played the Nordic guy. What is Skellige?
Oh, great.
The Skellige guy.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Dude, Skellige is
What is
amazing.
it? Crack of
Skellige.
Crate, I believe.
Well, Krakon Crate is the character in the third Witcher game, but the character from the show is the husband of Queen Calanth, who is a
Yes.
different character.
Okay.
At that point, Krakon Crate is just a kid at that point.
Okay, at the diner, the dinner where Geralt calls Law of Surprise, that was the different crate that I'm thinking of. I thought that was
Yes.
a young Crack-On crate, but that's
No,
incorrect.
yeah, that's a different dude because they showed him die at the at that one battle. against Nilfgaard. Yeah, that dude was I can't remember that character's name unfortunately, but he was an awesome. That actor did a great job, and
he was
did
good
a
in the
great
book.
job. Yeah,
good in the book.
exactly. Yeah, the Skellige king. He was kind of a trophy king for Queen Calanth.
I love
because she had all the power, but he was kind of just trophy king.
Oh, but also at the ballroom dinner, the banquet, one of the people aiming to be the husband of the queen's daughter, I can't think of her name off the top of my head.
Princess Pavetta.
Yes. I believe one of the guys that was just like in the crowd was Crack on Crate. So he was at the table. He was the Skelich guy, like making jokes about other people.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But yeah, the husband, obviously, he was great.
Yeah.
The new king, yeah, he played that role great.
Yeah.
I just liked in the beginning, the early episodes, he's like behind the queen and he's kind of like toying with Ciri. He's like, oh, I bet we wish we were doing this or that or whatever. And you know, it obviously, you get his personality. He's kind of like a trophy husband. And but yet he
was a real friend of Ciri.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah.
Like they were kind of the less formal ones, whereas Queen Calanth was all about show and prestige and royalty. They were kind of on the sidelines going, you know, this is kind of, we can still have our fun. We can play our roles, but we can still have our fun.
And then I loved, like, obviously in battle, Skellige, huge. And then I liked in the book, when I was reading the book, that scene had a different feel to it. Like, I loved how they played it up where Dandelion, like, or Yesquire, like, was like, oh yeah, come, and then, you know, you have to dress down and you have to do all this. And the first thing that happens is Geralt goes in there and the mage is like, Geralt, why are you dressed like this? Like, it was amazing.
Yeah, so, top of his lungs, he's like, Geralt of Rivia, like announcing him to the room.
That was Mouse.
Yeah, Yesquire's like, oh shit.
Yeah,
I did love that, and I loved like the point that he was getting him to come there because he was like trying to like get out of just accidentally impregnating one of the servants or something, or like going after one of the other ladies,
one of the noble women, I think.
Yeah, noble women. But go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, just like on that just made me think it's funny because in the book they kind of mention it at one point because Geralt has like a soft spot in his heart for Yesquire, Dandelion, or Buttercup, whatever you want to call him. But
right,
because he's responsible for introducing Geralt to Yennefer by accident, obviously, with the whole Ghent situation. But like Ciri's really because of Dandelion, because he got him to go there. So like Geralt has a soft spot for him, but like he brings him into all this stuff that's like completely shaped his entire life.
Yeah, very true.
Like Ciri, Yennefer. Like,
right.
What's the mission? The mission with Dandelion has to do with the doppelganger, right? In Witcher 3. And it's like a huge arc in this story.
Right.
And it's all because of some shit that Dandelion got into.
I know online a lot of the Witcher fans were also displeased about the portrayal of doppelgangers because in the game and in the books, I think they're kind of more altruistic. They're kind of good. They're just trying to fit in despite their powers. But in the show, the one doppelganger that they show is like an extreme expert and a murderous like serial killer.
Refers to himself as we.
Right. Right. Because
it's almost like Lord of the Rings throw out there with like Gollum, Smeagol.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it is. So I know a lot of people were. I don't have any opinion one way or the other. Yeah. I think they do call it out in the show where Cahir first confronts him and he's like, "Hey, you're not like your other doppelgangers. You're more professional and distinctive or whatever he calls it." So I think they do call it. The writers recognize what they're doing with the doppelgangers and they address it. So I really don't feel any need to complain about that.
Yeah. Something that I was thinking about was in that part of the game, too, I remember you sneak into the room and the doppelganger is like super innocent, right? Am I not crazy? He's almost like kind of a buffoon in a way. Am I remembering that arc right? Right?
Well, in The Witcher 3, you put on a play to lure Dudu in. Do you remember that part?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And then later you meet Dudu, and Dudu is impersonating one of the gangsters of Novigrad. And I totally did not catch on to that really quick. I'm like, how did this son of a bitch live? And then Siri figures it out, I think. She's like, oh, it's Dudu because of the scar that he had.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, do you guys recall that?
I remember that now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked a lot. Like I love that in the book, that episode where obviously the law of surprise comes in. I liked how the Queen was having like that dialogue, and Geralt was being Geralt and not really like playing into it. But there was a sword hidden behind his chair in the book, and she's just like, pick that sword up, do your thing. Right. And
Geralt,
yeah.
I was just going to say, Demon, sorry for interrupting.
No, go for it.
Geralt is really an apolitical character, meaning he doesn't pick sides in a conflict. He tries to maintain neutrality, to try to hear both sides out and to try to understand both perspectives, which I think is really admirable about Geralt. And that's a lot of the reason why a lot of Witcher fans really like Geralt, is because he's apolitical. He doesn't choose sides, He gives both sides a fair hearing. And he does that in the court of Queen Calanthe, and it kind of works against him because she orders him executed at that point. But he's just too good, and he capably defends himself, as well as the hedgehog guy whose name is Urchion of Ehrenwald, who his nickname is Dunny. Dunny is what the princess calls him. Yeah.
What a terrible nickname. Yeah. Dunny. I'm Dunny, and I'm a hedgehog.
That point, Captain, goes back to also like the first episode where he's like, I'm not choosing any evil. Like the lesser evil versus any evil. He's like, I won't choose any evil. He tries to stay neutral, but he always obviously ends up involved in.
Yeah, it's his hand is often forced, but Geralt tries his damnedest to be neutral. we'll say that.
It's interesting because he does take a stand when it is like direct and clear,
when it
and
really
right
matters.
In his way. But he always takes a stand. What was it in the book? It didn't show up in the show, but in the book, where the nobles were like surrounding Geralt, and they were like, "Oh, you made a fool of us, so you have to, like lose to this young noble kid or whatever." You remember this in the book? And the dwarf's there, Zoltan's there, and he's like, "I'm staying out of this," and he beats the kid he fights the kid.
Yes, I remember this.
He never strikes him.
It was outside of the monastery. Yeah, they wanted to get some kind of benefit out of the monastery. They were trying to extort them or something. Yes, I remember this now, Demon.
Well, there's like a political thing going on, and he's staying out of it again, but the monastery's protecting him. Right. Or whatever. And so he says, fine, I won't strike you whatsoever. But he hits the kid's sword so hard the kid stabs himself in the face. And he has this huge scar in his face. Like, I want to see that in the next episode, in the next season. Like that story was amazing. That was the intro to Zoltan. And I just loved it, where he just like didn't do anything but block. And then he just like hits it so hard, the kid. And then they were just like, what, you said you weren't gonna, attack or you were going to lose. And I'm like, it's not my problem. Right. I didn't strike him. Zoltan's like, I didn't see the Witcher strike the kid at all.
There's a really good example too, when you guys get to Blood and Wine, of there's a character who was born during the wrong sun cycle and is basically deemed like a bad person because when they were born. Yeah. But when he talks about it in the game, he's like, if you were told you're a bad person because you were born this, and that was the assumption of you your entire life, like, of course you're going to. So he's already like always taking that, like trying to understand all sides of it.
Yeah.
Not too many spoilers into the game since you guys hadn't played it, because it's a kind of a key character, but that's a cool growth on, like, it's consistent Geralt throughout all forms of whether it's TV, book, game.
Awesome.
Part of it comes because, you know, he views himself and is treated like a monster all the time, even though he's hunting the monsters, even though he doesn't want to stoop down to those levels like he says in the show, but that shows up in the game often. He's always making the hard calls, and it always ends up kind of like shitting on him a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
it does not give him much advantage.
No. And he's just trying to like kind of, to be honest, he's like kind of trying to be a good human being for the most part. And it's not always playing out, but it's kind of really interesting to watch. So we didn't get all the stories in the first season. What are the stories you guys are most looking forward to? You heard mine. I want the vampire love story with the beast who owns the house, and I want Zoltan's story where Zoltan's introduced and we get to see Geralt of Rivia beat a kid by not fighting him. Yes. And it
was a Nilfgaardian kid, if I remember correctly.
No, was it? It
probably deserved it.
I think it was.
Okay.
I want to say it was.
I only remember that he was recovering in this monastery, and he
was a knight. He was a knight.
He had a relationship with the monastery, but like the political power had changed in the city or the city-state, and whatever country, city-state it was, the new leadership was like kind of getting this like religious paladin-esque force going that was separate from the monastery. And so like they didn't get along, the new paladin group in the monastery themselves. So there was another the great thing about these stories, there's always these kind of like gray political intrigue going on. Yeah. Geralt is trying very hard not to partake in it. But what other stories do you guys want to see, or characters, or, you know, let's like dive into what we think.
Want me to start, Al, or you want to start?
You could go.
Alrighty. So one of the characters that I'm really excited to see at some point is from the games only. He's not in the book series, but he's a huge character in the games called Letho of Gullet. Did either of you guys meet him?
Is he in 3?
He is optional in 3. You can choose to say that you killed him in the past, or you can say that you spared him. And if you say that you spared him, he'll appear as a character in Witcher 3, and he is amazing.
Yes, I remember this. I said spare.
He's a super buff Witcher from the Snake School, and he's got a southern accent. Like,
Bald, right?
Yeah, he's bald, super
bald
buff.
Okay.
Hey, White Wolf, I've just come down to get these guys down here. Dude, that guy is so awesome. I am super stoked to see him at some point in the show. I think he will be an amazing, amazing addition. And then for monsters, I really want to see Foglets, because those creepy bastards really are scary.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Disappearing, and that'd be a cool battle.
A cool monster battle, indeed.
All right, I know we're not ending this because we're going to discuss this, but I have to chime in on Foglets real quick. Monsters. That's another thing that I was a little disappointed about in the show. Is they stopped introducing some of the coolest monsters. They didn't show them. Like there was stuff that maybe it was a budgetary thing.
Yeah,
it could be, right? Yeah. Could be a budgetary thing, but it would have been awesome if they like showed some of the different creatures and stuff that we get to fight. And I'm hoping, because of its success, maybe the budget will dictate that we get to see a lot more monsters in the new.
Yeah.
On that same point, real quick, Demon, I just wanted to throw in one of the starter episodes. It's the episode where they do the dragon hunt, and there's two peasants bickering about what they want to pay Geralt, and Geralt throws down like a fork-tail head or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, why didn't we get to see that fight? I wanted to see that fight.
I gotta think it was probably a budget. I totally agree, Captain. I thought the same thing when I was like, you're showing the end result of the hunt, but where was the hunt?
Right? I want to see that, man. Like, it's kind of predictable, but I still want to see it. It's really cool.
for how many drowners and the Spectre ghosts, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, that you have to kill in the video game, I'm also like, how do they not bring those into the show? Because I feel like I killed every time I was at a beach, I had to fight a drowner.
Freaking drowners were everywhere. Not only that, you're in a boat. You're just like in a boat, one of the most peaceful situations ever. You got all that good, peaceful music going on, and then suddenly you've got drowners swimming all around you.
Right.
It's like, God damn it. I could agree. I want some monster cameos, big ones. Yeah. And I want them to be like full monster cameos.
Yes, agreed.
So for me, outside of that, I think Vesemir is a big one, and they give you a tiny intro at the end of the 8th episode, the season finale, season 1, where you hear him. I would love
casted.
It on IMDb. He is casted.
Who they cast?
It's a guy I had not seen, but I looked at, I believe, Tim Pool.
He's like a Danish actor or something like that.
Yeah,
I saw that as well.
He looks like he could definitely fit the look that they're going for based on the video games.
I know a lot of people were pulling for Mark Hamill, which, for the record, I think would have been an awesome choice.
That would have been.
That actually would have been awesome.
That would have been amazing. So Vesemir, I'm super excited to see, and with that, kind of some of Geralt's backstory surrounding his training or how the mutations worked and things like that. Another one, which you guys may not have seen yet, because it's a Blood and Wine character that clearly dates back to further in the games or potentially the books, is there's a vampire named Regis, who's really cool in that, and he's a super high level vampire, which you learn much more about that. But they obviously have like the lower levels. I can't think of the name. It starts with an E. It's hard to pronounce, but there's different. Yes, Ikimara, which is a variant of a vampire, and then you have the high vampires. And when you get into Blood and Wine, that's super interesting. And this character knows Geralt from way back, so I'm assuming he's in the games before Witcher 3. So his name's Regis. Or the books, probably both.
Yeah, actually, I'm not gonna say. I had read that Regis had fought against Vilgefortz. With Geralt and Yennefer.
Wow.
He had teamed up with them. That's what I read.
So, on that tangent that you had earlier, I'd love to see how they introduce Regis, because the whole vampire thing is, it's great. In the game, he's like, he doesn't have human blood. He's almost like an addict. He's like, if I got it, it's bad, so I stay away from it. So it's really interesting how they portray that, different from your standard vampire type stories.
Right. Yeah, interesting.
That's cool. Yeah, the best thing about this is that there's so much lore. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the way that these books were made, there's all these side characters. There's all this hinted at lore, so you get a lot of flexibility, but you get it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun if they keep these seasons going.
Agreed.
So we got a Vesemir. I looked up, by the way, while you guys were talking. I was like, oh man, I'm going to look this up. Mm-hmm. And of course, I look up Vesemir IMDb, and I mean, the people that they wanted to get Mark Hamill, they wanted Viggo Mortensen to play.
Oh snap!
Vesemir. I mean, they were looking for everything.
Choice.
Mark Hamill was huge, though. He's all over it. They're like, the beard, everything.
He could have done an awesome job.
Of course. And you know what? I don't want to take any thunder away from who got it. Maybe he's going to be awesome. I don't know.
I'm sure he will be. I have faith in their casting ability. You guys were saying.
Part of it also, if you get too big of a name, I mean, the hope is that we're going to have 5, 6, 7 seasons. So sometimes, especially with these shows, which you saw with Game of Thrones, is you almost need to cast it with, which Henry Cavill doesn't obviously fit that, but you need to cast it with people that are either on board or able to stick around for when you want to do it.
If you hear Henry Cavill talk about it, though, he was playing The Witcher and he loved it. And then he found out The Witcher was going and he's like, I want to be that.
You are that.
That's literally what he said. So then he got the role. So I think this is one of those more is something that I want to do kind of roles.
Yeah, totally.
I had read, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but I had read that Henry Cavill slept in his costume and cooked in his costume and lived in his costume.
That's amazing.
Which I believe. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yes.
Dude, that's as good as Viggo Mortensen with Aragorn, who refused stunt weight blades. He only wanted the real blade, and he would take it to every restaurant he went into and put it on the bench. And like, awesome. I'm like, that is why it worked.
That's commitment.
It is.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking up right now. I'm trying to see this with pool or
no, it's not. I was way off on that. That's I think some like conspiracy theorist. Kim Bodnia.
Oh, that's it. That's what I keep getting. And actually, because I'm looking at him, and then I'm looking at the animation of Vesemir, and with the right like hair and beard, he looks like Vesemir. And if the voice works and he could deliver that, that's going to be gold.
Yeah.
So.
Totally.
Mark Hamill would have been fun as hell.
Yes,
but,
that would have been awesome.
I'm open to give this guy a shot for sure. It looks like a good casting. So
sweet.
I don't know. It should be fun. Anything else that you guys want to see in the new season? I mean, I got those 2 stories. I got to read the second book and like kind of make sure. What about Ciri? Is Ciri stay like or she's gonna grow over time? Yeah. I love the casting as a kid, but.
So, and I looked that up too because I had the same questions. The actress, I think she's like 19, so they make her look very young in the first season.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be perfect because
she's 19.
I believe so.
She looks like she's 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did a really good job on that, and I think that's going to translate perfectly for her growing into the older Ciri throughout the.
That's really clever if you could pull that off. I don't know how exactly. They just alter her size maybe too.
Yeah, and who knows? Because a lot of the scenes she's either by herself with a much older person, or she was with the elf. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he obviously seems to be in a similar age. So
holy cow,
they just did a good job.
Oh my God, I'm looking at it right now. She looks like
totally different. Yeah.
Different.
So that'll be perfect. So if they want to jump,
if
they want to jump a few years ahead, that's not really an issue in terms of making it believable.
Wow, that's cool. Well, good for them. That's very clever. That's actually, that's amazing foresight because they're like, either 2 things happen. You cast as a kid, and then this, the story progresses too slow for you to make it, and so they outage. And so that's where you get in, Game of Thrones, because like they just accept that the time frame is different than what it's in the books, and that worked. But you have that issue.
But you don't always know what the case is going to be.
In a situation with The Witcher, you have to control the time frames very much because you're doing flashbacks, and then you're in the future, and you're all over the place. So you got to be more careful about that. So that's an amazing casting because they're just like, we have it. Let's make her look really young, and then we could have her be more herself for the teenage years, and then later on, obviously, when we get into Witcher 3 level, she's obviously a full adult.
And I love
go ahead
with Ciri what they did with showing. They didn't show you her power, but they kind of show you. So at the end of the 7th episode, she has like a moment where they're trying to abduct her. Right. And then the start of episode 8 comes in. She wakes up with the wife of the guy who saves Geralt. And you just see these bodies just like on branches and like hanging from trees because until that point, like playing the games and stuff, she's special and you've seen a little bit of it, but then you're like, she's got some power and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So her story is going to be cool to see develop too. And then that relationship with Geralt and Yennefer is going to be cool.
All right. Agreed. So let me toss it out now. Anything else you guys want to see? Any last comments? Last gripes? Anything?
Yeah. Last comments. I'd like to see a little bit more gray area with Nilfgaard. Okay. I think they're kind of just portrayed straight evil in the show, and I'd like to see a little bit more of a gray area. I really like that moment in the game where in Witcher 3 when you meet a Nilfgaardian officer, and he's commanding this new area of the Northern Realms that they've taken over, and he meets with a peasant, and he's like, all right, you're going to give us a certain amount of grain each couple of months. And the peasant's, he's like, how much can you give? And the peasant's like, well, I could probably give 60. And the Nilfgaard officer's like, well, give 50, and then you'll be fine. And eventually later in the game, you go back, and the peasant was not able to deliver that amount. He gave like shitty stale grain. So the Nilfgaardian officer whips him, and Geralt like critiques the Nilfgaardian officer. He's like, oh, so this is how you treat your new like people or whatever. He's like, he didn't like. I made extra steps to let this guy, appease the new nation that he's serving, and he still failed. So I want to see.
Or he lied about what he could produce.
Right. Or he just straight lied to my face. Right. Either way, like, I want to see more gray area with Nilfgaard where they're not just all straight Nazis, basically. I want a little bit more of a gray area. And then I want to see more monster fights.
Yes.
I really like the monster fights. I kind of felt like they let us down a little bit in that arena in the first season, but they can always easily make up for it. So I'm cool with that.
Okay. Anything else? No? All right. I think that's it, folks. We did a long episode today. Some is cut out while we're getting drinks. Thanks to Gunther Odin.
We only paused for a few seconds while our glasses were immediately filled. So,
but that's our cap on The Witcher Book 1 and some of Book 2. Netflix Season 1. Looking forward to Season 2. And games currently 1, 2, and 3 plus the DLCs. So we'll revisit it. Obviously, the games and the DLCs are future, so they'll continue to reintroduce themselves as we discuss anything Witcher. But it's pretty fun. I'll keep reading the books, and we'll see where we get. And with that said, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Comments below. Have a good one.
And don't forget to toss a coin to your Witcher.
Toss a coin to your
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Lit Literature. If you liked us, please check out our social media at Lit Literature 1 at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't hesitate to join in on the conversation. We appreciate the conversation, the questions, book recommendations, anything of that sort. Join in right on the social media websites. And don't forget to check us out at our website, litliterature.com, and our upcoming projects, though there aren't many now besides Lit Literature, you can find at lyket.net, Lyket. We do have a Patreon account, but if you truly want to support us, please like and share. Cheers.